How many times have you heard or been told that there is a housing shortage? We're talking at a national level, the state level, and of course right here in Dallas. I literally just bumped into an article by the Dallas Morning News entitled "Texas Must Build Hundreds of Thousands of New Homes to Combat Shortage," state report says. Now, the thing is, experientially, we know inventory's up, right? The MLS data screams it loud and clear. There are 35.6% more homes for sale in Denton County than there were last year. In Collin County, that number is 61.3%. In Dallas County, there are 48.5% more homes for sale. In Rockwall County, it's 38.5%. In Kaufman County, it's 34.8% up. And these are not small numbers. I mean, at the least, you're up over 1/3, and at the most, more than half. Common sense tells you this is not what a housing shortage would look like, and yet you have the Dallas Morning News proclaiming a housing shortage. So what is this Dallas Morning News article talking about, and where are they getting their data? Well, the article explains that Texas has the most building permits since 2008, but it isn't keeping up with population growth in urban areas. Or how about this in the article? Texas needs to build hundreds of thousands of homes to keep up with growing demand and curb high housing costs, according to a report from Texas Comptroller Glenn Heger's office. Okay, I think we're starting to get the picture here. This housing shortage is based on the idea that we have so many people moving here to Dallas that we don't have enough housing inventory for them all to live in. So now we have both the Dallas Morning News and the Texas Comptroller saying the same thing, that Texas has a housing shortage. It needs hundreds of thousands of homes to keep up with demand. Now the question is, are they right? Because I think many would say these are credible sources. I mean, we're talking about the Texas Comptroller here. I mean, you would think that it would have a pretty good idea of what's going on. Now, right about now, I bet some of you are starting to get a bad feeling about this video. I mean, it seriously has all the makings of someone making a YouTube video about a housing shortage in Texas and why you need to buy and buy now before prices go up more, you know, like your classic FOMO. But if you guys know me at all, you know that's not me. All right, so let's dig into this more. The article continues, Texas needed 306,000 more homes as of 2023, according to one estimate cited in the report. Then later in the article explains, from 2020 to 2023, DFW led all U.S. metro areas in population growth and net domestic migration. It topped an estimated 8 million residents last year. All right, we get it. We're getting a lot more people, so we must need a lot more homes, right? And then you find this statement. DFW has been among the nation's leaders in apartment and single-family housing production, but it isn't enough. Over 367,000 new homes and 181,000 apartments have been built in the last decade. By one estimate, the DFW metro area is still short almost 50,000 units. I find articles like this frustrating because you have this pull of credible sources claiming a housing shortage, but then you have this very real life view of what we're seeing in the housing market, which is long days on the market and increased inventory. What really bothers me about these articles is how they're so often used. All right, how many times do they get used by realtors to pressure you into buying quickly? All right, I mean, we just talked about that, right? They use it to build a sense of scarcity, to make you want to act now and to not plan on having much wiggle room on price. You know, because if there are barely any homes out there, you're gonna know better than to expect anything big from negotiations, right? You know, so boom, the realtor's job just got a lot easier, and they may even get a higher commission. So a lot can be accomplished by quoting this data. And again, it's from credible sources, so why wouldn't buyers believe it? And realtors aren't the only ones doing this either. These articles are also used by builders and sales consultants who really thrive off that sense of scarcity and FOMO. It gives builders all the more reason, right, to pursue zoning reform, to advocate building more and more houses on really tiny lots. And I am not a huge fan of that. It'll oversupply the housing market, and home values will eventually drop from that. Oversupply is not good for individual home sellers. So I decided to do a deep dive into the research with an open mind. Again, looking at these credible sources versus the real life housing market, right? And I didn't know what I'd find, but either way, I decided I was going down the rabbit hole. Well, digging into the data, the Dallas Morning News article referenced a report from the Texas Comptroller's office, so that was my first stop. The Texas Comptroller Comptroller released an article called Texas Comptroller Glenn Heger releases study on state's housing affordability challenge. In it, the article reads, Texas Comptroller Glenn Heger announced today his agency's Housing Affordability Challenge report. The report examines the factors contributing to the housing affordability crisis across the U.S., how the crisis is affecting Texans, and how the state is faring in comparison to the rest of the country. So then from the Comptroller's article, I popped over to their Housing Affordability Challenge report. Okay, so this report released by the Texas Comptroller describes housing affordability like this. It's the ability of someone with a median family income to afford median-priced housing. They continue saying that housing affordability is at its lowest level in the U.S. since 1985, according to the National Association of Realtors. In fact, Texas's median home prices rose by 40% between 2019 and 2023. The article continues, a rapid upswing in prices in Texas and the U.S. began in 2020 due to increased opportunities to telework, federal stimulus and unemployment payments, low mortgage rates, a surging stock market, and accelerating domestic migration to the state, according to the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas. Next, it talks about population growth. It explains how Texas is a top destination for domestic migration, putting acute pressure on the state's housing affordability. It continues, the Dallas-Fort Worth-Arlington area led all U.S. metro areas in population growth and in net domestic migration between 2020 and 2023. Then it states that in 2023, Texas was 306,000 homes short of what was needed, according to an analysis by Up for Growth. Now, I want you to think about this. How many times did the Dallas Morning News article talk about affordability? Not a whole heck of a lot. All right, it waxed eloquent about a housing shortage and the number of units needed, right? But then one thing I noticed in the Comptroller's report is that it had a huge emphasis on affordability. Like they barely referenced a housing shortage without referring to it as an affordable housing shortage. Now, something else I noticed is that the Texas Comptroller referenced their data according to an analysis by Up for Growth. Now, that was what I really wanted to know. I really wanted to see the source data. So then I jumped over to Up for Growth and I started looking around there. I was seeing a lot of data on underproduction numbers, but what I wasn't finding was where they were getting their source data. I mean, you have the Dallas Morning News quoting the Comptroller as their source, right? And the Comptroller quoting Up for Growth as their source, right? But my big question was, where was Up for Growth getting their housing shortage data from? All right, what I wanted to know their methodology. And believe me, I spent a lot of time on their website. I mean, it has so much information on how many housing units we are short. Like it explains it in all the different areas. I mean, just a ton of information, but nothing on what data they were basing these numbers on. And you know what? Not a lot of emphasis on the word affordability either. I mean, I even did a Google. Are you ready for this? I did a Google on how does Up for Growth determine household formation data? And Google was kind enough to tell me Up for Growth does not provide information on how they determine household formation data. So that was not particularly helpful. What I did find out was Up for Growth calculates underproduction as the difference between total housing need and total housing availability. It discusses drivers and trends. All right, here's what they say. Not since the beginning of suburbanization have household formation patterns shifted as dramatically as they have since March 2020. They say that housing underproduction is getting worse. It is spreading geographically, and it is shifting from urban areas to suburbs and small towns. They continue explaining that housing underproduction worsened from 2019 to 2021, and 83%, 256 of all markets are worsening. They even have graphs, all right? They have charts, they have all kinds of data pointing to a housing shortage. Now, personally, I wasn't gonna be satisfied until I could find Up for Growth's methodology. I mean, we have a lot riding on its accuracy here. Again, we've got Dallas Morning News quoting the Comptroller and the Comptroller quoting Up for Growth, all right? But who says Up for Growth is even accurate? So after looking and looking and looking, I eventually found a report called Technical Memorandum to Up for Growth's Housing Underproduction in the U.S. report. And finally, I got some answers in a report written for 2022. The article reads, the report primarily relies on publicly available data from the Census Bureau that is available and updated annually so that a consistent methodology can be applied for each year of the estimates and for future reports. It continues saying that in order to calculate the number of units each region should have, the report adds the total households in the region to an estimate of missing households, then multiplies this by a target vacancy rate. Now, the idea of a missing household was intriguing, okay? So I read up on it a little bit more, and here's what I found. Missing households are an important symptom of not building enough housing. Example of missing households are children over 18 still living with their parents, or single people living together as roommates at higher levels than has been historically observed. It continues. The methodology then sums total existing households and the estimate of missing households to represent the total number of households that under unconstrained market conditions would be seeking housing in each region were it available and affordable. What I ultimately found after reading through all of these reports is that you will find a lot of quotable content on Up for Growth about a housing shortage that doesn't specifically reference affordability. I mean, people can get credible quotes to tell you that there is a housing shortage. Now, you've got lots of charts and graphs, and many credible sources will quote this data just like the Dallas Morning News did. But the issue I was seeing most of the time is the emphasis on build, build, build. Not enough, right? How can we build more? Up for Growth in particular really doesn't reference the affordability aspect, but you'll remember the Texas Comptroller's article did. Well, here's the thing. Mass building is not going to help if they continue to overbuild unaffordable homes. The more I was going down the rabbit hole, the more I realized this isn't about a housing shortage. All right, it's about an affordable housing shortage, and there is a huge distinction there. The National Association of Realtors wrote an article titled Trends in Housing Affordability: Who Can Currently Afford to Buy a Home? It explains that housing affordability has long been a critical issue in the housing market. While the challenges associated with affording a home are not new, they have remained one of the main concerns in the housing market, particularly as higher mortgage rates have exacerbated the situation. The article continues, the widening gap between income levels and housing costs make home ownership increasingly out of reach for many. Now, it did give some good news though, all right? It states, with mortgage rates recently falling below 6.5%, there has been an improvement in housing affordability. Rates below 6.5% make it possible for American families to afford to purchase a median-priced home. Later in the article, it had a section called How Many Households Can Afford to Buy a Home Now versus in 2021 and 2019. And this is exactly the data I wanted to see, since it would show me where we are in our affordable housing shortage. Now, here's what it said. The pool of people who can afford a home has shrunk considerably compared to previous years. Households that once could comfortably afford a median-priced home are now finding it increasingly difficult as they must allocate a larger portion of their income to mortgage payments. They continue saying that currently 1 in 3 households, 33%, can afford to purchase a median-priced home without spending more than 25% of their income on their mortgage payment. By contrast, in 2021, when mortgage rates were around 3%, 55% of households met the income requirements. In 2019, before the pandemic, housing was even more affordable, with nearly 60% of households able to purchase a home. But listen to this part, because this really hit home. The article explains, since 2021, 28.4 million households have been priced out of the market, and 30.4 million households can no longer afford a median-priced home since 2019. And finally, it describes that only 17% of potential first-time buyers, right, current renters, can afford to buy the median-priced starter home. In 2021, 37% of renter households earned the qualifying income, and in 2019, 42% of renters were able to transition to home ownership. As a result, 8.7 million renter households have been priced out since 2021 and 10.6 million since 2019. And here we can see where the real shortage is coming from. I mean, think back on Up for Growth's methodology. They had a heavy focus on calculating missing households, okay? Adults over the age of 18 still living at home. And they say that number has increased due to a lack of houses. All right, well, that number has definitely increased, but it isn't due to a lack of housing. Since 2021, 28.4 million households can't afford a home. This has nothing to do with whether there are houses out there. All right, there could be hundreds, if not thousands of homes out there. I mean, even just in Dallas, sitting vacant. All right, that doesn't matter to those 28.4 million households because they've been priced out. When it comes to Up for Growth's methodology, does that mean we're going to see those missing household numbers go up? Oh, absolutely. Which encourages their claim that we have a housing shortage and we need to build more. Does that mean we have an across-the-board housing shortage though? No, it means we have an affordable housing shortage. It is vital that a distinction is drawn here. Up for Growth does not do enough to differentiate between a housing shortage and an affordable housing shortage. At the end of the day, that is a very big difference because it means unaffordable homes are gonna sit on the market. All the while, you have more and more missing households, and you have Up for Growth saying we have a housing shortage, which makes, larger sources like the Dallas Morning News and the Texas Comptroller say similar things. And we already talked about how all kinds of people in the business are using these articles in poor ways. All right, pushing for more unaffordable homes to be built, that is not gonna help our lack of affordability. You've got to have an understanding that when you're watching a YouTube video or speaking with maybe a realtor or a sales consultant, if they pressure you to make a fast decision on a home or create a sense of urgency by saying we have a housing shortage, you have to understand the distinction, okay? Because the difference between a housing shortage and an affordable housing shortage, it might sound simple, okay? It's just one word, but it makes a huge difference when you're buying a home. If you believe there is a housing shortage, you'll be likely to offer aggressively and hastily, right? It's that scarcity mindset, hurry, hurry, we have a housing shortage. But if you realize there is an affordable housing shortage, but inventory is actually up and up in higher price ranges, you'll be able to be patient and negotiate with more confidence. I mean, even though it is the difference of just one word, right? That word affordable. It is a whole mindset shift when you're looking at buying a home. It's about buying with urgency versus buying strategically and finding the best deal. Now, if I piqued your interest on this whole concept of getting a good deal and being strategic, I created a whole video with insider tips on negotiating that you can watch right here. In the meantime, Wendy out.